How do you become a successful writer or just about any other thing in life? So I'm Dr. David Maslach. I am a research professor at a large university in Florida. I study strategy as well as innovation and entrepreneurship. And I've also created this cool website. It's a proofreading platform where you can go and exchange and help other people proofread their work, as well as you can get your own work done. It's called reciprocity.com, and the E is a 3, so it's reciprocity. You just change up the E for a 3. And so this question is how to become successful. It's actually a really big topic in our field. It's actually the main dependent variable. It's the main thing that we look at as strategy scholars, is how to become successful. And over the years, we've started to think about, so initially we were looking at large companies, very, very large companies, 50,000, 100,000 people that are in these companies and how they become successful. Now, over the last probably 10, 15 years, we've been really focusing on all the different firms, all the different sizes of firms. So going from a very small startup sole proprietorship to how they get larger and larger and larger and become a 100,000 employee company. And we are very concerned about how these firms actually grow and they become successful over time. And one of the main theoretical views in this area, so one thing that I prescribe to, I really focus on as a theoretical view, is the behavioral theory. So this is, in this theory, one of the main ideas is that people try to, or firms as well, try to repeat actions that lead to success and avoid actions that lead to failure over time. So we're really concerned about what is success and failure. So that's one thing I wanted to start off with today is, what is success? What is failure? Well, it's actually, and it's something that kind of irks me a little bit, because I hear a lot of people talking about success and becoming success, but they're not very well defined in what it means to become successful and compared to being a quote-unquote failure. It's actually a really tricky thing to do, and there's lots of debate about it. But what it is, or the definition that we have arrived upon for the most part, is success is some sort of performance, current performance relative to your aspirations, or what you expect your performance to be. So what are your aspirations? This is what you expected your performance should be in the future, so sometime in the future, and then you perform these particular actions and you see if your current performance matches that those expectations of future performance. And if they don't, if you thought you were going to be at this level, but you're actually below that level, that means that you're probably have failed with that particular action. And if you thought that your expectations were, or if you thought your performance were going to be at this level and you're above that, that means that you have a very successful action. You did something that was quite well, right? That you thought you were going to perform at a certain level, but you actually performed a lot better. And so these aspirations, expectations are actually defined relative to your past performance, what you thought how you behaved over time. And so you can actually set these aspirations really, really low if you want to, just by expecting that you're not going to perform very, very well. So if you expect that you're not going to perform very well over time, then you are going to feel like you're very, very successful over time. So you can feel very successful just by setting those aspirations very, very low. It's actually a really nice trick behaviorally or mentally. Just set your aspirations really low for a particular action, and you're going to feel like you're very, very successful whenever you do something. So, coming back to this YouTube channel, currently right now I've got like 87 subscribers, and it's not a real big deal. And my expectations, if I set my expectations, I'm going to get 1,000 subscribers in a night, which is highly unlikely. That is and that is probably far too high. But if I do set them at that height and they wake up the next morning and they're not there, that means I failed. But if I set my expectations, then I'm going to get one more subscriber, then I actually succeeded if I get that one subscriber, which is actually a great thing to do. And so you constantly are building over time, right? You're building as you move through this particular process. The other way that you can set your aspirations in such that you can feel that you're very, very successful is choose your aspirations relative to a social peer or a social reference set, and you choose it to some rather obscure, very narrow definition of these peers. Right, so if you choose your aspirations, your expectation, or your social reference group, and you look at their performance, and it's really obscure. So, for example, if you like chicken farming, and you're looking for all the chicken farming YouTube folks out there, and you are the best, you have the highest number of subscribers, you make the most amount of revenue or something like that on YouTube of these chicken farmers, then you're very very successful relative to those peers. But that's really obscure, and you should probably actually be focusing on something that's a little bit broader. But then if you do that, then if you focus on the broader categories, such as you're focusing on all of the YouTubers out there, for example, that you're not going to feel all that successful relative to those folks, because there's some people that have so many different subscribers and things like that. So you want to make sure that you don't have such a broad reference group that you're always feeling like a failure. But you also don't want a really narrow reference group, so you're always feeling like a success. Well, unless you want to feel like a success all the time, that's great. Just focus on a very, very narrow, obscure reference set, and you're going to feel great all the time. But that's not how you sort of progress over time. That's something that I want to go to next. What is more interesting is not whether somebody is a quote-unquote success or their quote-unquote failure, or their particular firm that they have is failed versus succeeding. What is more unusual and interesting, I personally think, and we're currently doing some research on this at my school, is how do people and how do firms sort of repeatedly over time succeed? And this is a really interesting question, because what ends up happening if you succeed, if you do well in one particular area, what ends up happening is that these aspirations that you have, they actually start creeping up, right? So your future expectations, so let's say you have, let's say you like let's say that you're a gymnast, for example, and I'm sure that there's some gymnasts out there that might be watching this. If you're a gymnast and you do well in one competition, because and let's say you focus on a very obscure competition, you're competing within your own gym on, I'm not sure, some particular activity, and you did very well in your gym, then the next time you go and compete, and you do well again in another competition, then what's going to happen is you're going to start, your aspirations are going to get higher and higher, because you think that you're actually really, really good. And then you're going to go to another gym, or you go to the city gym, for example, and you compete against everybody else in the city. You're going to find out that you're not actually all that good relative to this larger peer set. So you're going to actually, what's going to happen is your aspirations are going to adjust higher. So it's going to be harder and harder to feel like you succeed as you continuously progress. As well, that you're going to start searching more and more broadly. You're going to start looking outside so that really obscure reference set, social reference set that you started with. So those chicken farmers, right? Chicken farmers on YouTube. That's going to start growing and growing and growing as you become more successful in that particular category, or that sort of social reference set that you have is going to get larger and larger and larger. You're looking and searching more broadly over time. And it's going to become harder and harder and harder to repeatedly succeed in the long run. What is really interesting with this is in order to continuously do this and become sort of a good at succeeding in the long run and being repeatedly succeeding, it's actually you need the thing that you need to keep doing. Actually, there's two things that you need to keep doing. The first thing that you need to keep doing is looking broadly for opportunities that are relatively difficult for you, so you adjust your aspirations low. So you're constantly looking for these different opportunities that are unusual and different, and you feel uncomfortable, so you adjust these aspirations low. So then you're going to feel like you can constantly keep succeeding over time, so you just adjust those aspirations. The other thing that you can do that it is totally understated is just keep doing the same thing that you're doing over the long run, because what ends up happening that we forget about is that there is a larger marketplace around you, and that there's many more competitors around you. And those, in general, they are, there's an unusual trait that most people don't have. And it's unusual because it's difficult to do. It's very difficult to do. And this unusual trait is just simple persistence and sticking to something. Most people will try something for a short period of time and then they're going to drop out. So if you're that person, if you're running your own firm, for example, your small business, even if you're a large business, just sticking in a particular area, if you're not doing well in a particular area, trying to adjust to find out how you can sort of keep going with that particular thing. If you just keep going over the long run and sort of solving problems along the way and adjusting things along the way, you can actually be very, very successful in the long run, because not everybody is going to do that and stay in that particular thing. So the trick is, though, you have to look at your environment and sort of predict where the environment's going to go, right? But the important thing is just persisting for a long time in a particular thing, and then making these adjustments based on what the environment is doing over time. So, for example, newspapers, newspaper publishers went through a series of changes over the last 10, 15 years when things started going online. First of all, there was like blogs, for example, and then there was things like the Huffington Post, and now actually things like YouTube are becoming more and more popular, these videos, so they're making adjustments along the way, but as long as they are focusing on what their core competence is, and they're doing that over the long haul, and they're really focusing on that core competence, which is producing high quality content, so things like companies like the Wall Street Journal, for example, they are going to continuously do well in the long run, as long as they're focusing on producing things that are amazing. The content that they're producing is amazing, and it's just simply the medium of exchange is changing over time, or medium of communication is changing over time. Sorry. So that's the important thing, and I think that's really interesting. So I wanted to get that off my chest, is the idea of what is success and failure, and how do you actually achieve that over time, or what is some of the research is suggesting to achieve that over time. So with that, if you like these YouTube videos, you think this is cool, and you want to help out in any sort of way, I appreciate it. It's amazing what you're doing. And all of those people that have already subscribed, you are so, again, I'm going to say this again, you are so cool. Because you're definitely helping out with growing this particular endeavor, the reciprocity.com, this proofreading platform that I'm building. And as well as I'm hoping to use this to help out science. So the more that you actually subscribe, the more people that are subscribing, the better it is. If you want to help out in other ways, you can go on to reciprocity.com as well and check it out. But with that, have a good day. Bye.